arrogant billionaire Groom insulted his bride's poor parents. Then the bride vanished before I do. "Father!" Derek's mocking laugh cut through the hall, loud enough for every guest to hear. He turned toward Marcus Carter, the bride's father, and sneered. "That's your father? In that ragged suit? My groomsmen look better than him." Gasps shot through the crowd. A woman in a red dress covered her mouth. Another leaned to her neighbor and whispered, "Did he just humiliate her parents at the altar?" Renee Carter, clutching her little black purse, shrank back, her lips trembling. Marcus's hand curled into a fist at his side, his jaw tight as he forced himself to stay silent. From the second row, Vanessa Montgomery, Derek's elegantly dressed stepmother, tilted her head toward a cluster of wealthy guests. "This is why I told Derek not to marry her," she hissed, loud enough to be heard. "Trash in-laws will always look like trash." Laughter trickled around her like poison. On the altar, Aaliyah Carter's eyes widened. Her heart pounded beneath the lace of her gown. She turned sharply to Derek, her voice trembling. "Did you just insult my parents, in front of everyone?" He smirked. "Don't be so sensitive, Aaliyah. I'm only speaking the truth." The orchestra faltered to a stop. The pastor froze, unsure how to proceed. Imani Carter, Aaliyah's fiery younger sister, half rose from her seat in the front row. Her voice sliced through the tense silence. "Don't let him talk to us like that, sis." "Don't you dare!" Aaliyah's throat tightened. Her gaze darted between her father's proud but humiliated face, her mother's tearful eyes, and Derek's smug grin. Every breath felt heavier, as if the walls of the grand Montgomery ballroom were closing in on her. The bouquet slipped from her hand, hitting the polished marble with a soft thud. Whispers ignited across the crowd like sparks. "Is she going to walk out?" "She can't." "Not at a Montgomery wedding. This will ruin everything." Aaliyah's chest rose and fell, rapidly. Her eyes burned, but instead of breaking, something inside her snapped into clarity. Without a word, she turned, gathered her gown, and ran. The gasps were deafening. Guests stumbled to their feet. Cameras flashed. Reporters in the back scrambled for their phones. "Did she just run away? She left him. The bride ran before I do." The heavy doors of the ballroom slammed behind her, echoing like thunder. Renee let out a broken cry, burying her face against Marcus's shoulder. Marcus pulled her close, his body stiff with shame and anger. Imani shouted at Derek, her voice fierce. "You did this! You humiliated our parents!" Guards stepped in, trying to calm the chaos, but the whispers kept swelling. Derek's proud face flushed red as he stood alone at the altar, abandoned in front of the city's elite. This was supposed to be the wedding of the year, the union of power and prestige. Instead, it was a disaster. The arrogant billionaire groom had mocked his bride's poor parents, and the bride had vanished before I do. "Where is she?" Derek Montgomery roared, his voice shaking the chandelier above as he stormed down the aisle. Tall, broad-shouldered, and wrapped in an Armani suit, the arrogant billionaire groom was no longer smiling. His face burned crimson, humiliated in front of hundreds. "She ran away," a guest whispered. "The bride ran away." The crowd erupted in chaos. Reporters scrambled for their cameras, flashes igniting the ballroom like lightning. The wedding of the year, the Montgomery Empire's proud display, was falling apart before their eyes. Renee Carter, the bride's mother, stood frozen in her modest lavender dress. Her hands clutched her small purse so tightly, her knuckles turned white. Tears streamed silently down her face. Beside her, Marcus Carter, Aaliyah's father, a factory worker with calloused hands and a proud posture, stared at Derek with fire in his eyes. "You humiliated us in front of everyone," Marcus growled, his voice trembling with restrained fury. And you wonder why my daughter ran? Derek spun on him, his tone sharp like a whip. Your daughter humiliated me. Do you understand what this will do to my reputation? To my company? Imani Carter, Aaliyah's younger sister, shot up from her seat. At only 21, she had the same fiery spirit her sister often lacked. Her voice thundered across the hall. Your reputation? You destroyed hers the moment you called our parents trash. You don't deserve her. Guests gasped. Some clutched their pearls. Others whispered excitedly. Scandal was more entertaining than vows. Vanessa Montgomery, Derek's stepmother, swept forward in her diamond necklace, her expression cold and smug. Known for her sharp tongue and her obsession with guarding the Montgomery fortune, she raised her chin and spoke as though addressing the press. Enough of this circus. Aaliyah was never fit for this family. She's nothing but a coward, running away like the poor girl she's always been. Imani whirled on her, eyes blazing. Say that again about my sister and I'll... Security moved quickly to calm the brewing storm, but whispers continued to rise. Meanwhile, outside the Montgomery estate, Aaliyah Carter, still in her wedding gown, fled through the courtyard. Her heart hammered in her chest, tears streaking her face. The night air wrapped around her as she gathered her gown and sprinted across the pavement, heels clattering against stone. Miss Carter, wait! A chauffeur called, chasing after her. Aaliyah shook her head, gasping through sobs. I'm not going back. Not ever. She darted into the street just as a city bus screeched to a stop. The driver blinked in shock at the sight of a bride in ivory lace, but Aaliyah climbed aboard, ignoring the stares of passengers. Her gown crumpled against the faded plastic seats as the doors hissed shut. Inside the ballroom, Derek ripped off his boutonniere, tossing it to the marble floor. Reporters pushed microphones at him. Did the bride abandon you, Mr. Montgomery? Is it true you insulted her parents? Will the Montgomery wedding continue? Vanessa touched his arm, her smile sharp as glass. Forget her, Derek. We'll find someone worthy of you. But Derek's jaw locked tight. Beneath his arrogance, shame and panic clawed at him. He forced a cold smile at the cameras. She'll be back, he lied. No one runs from me. But deep inside, Derek Montgomery knew the truth. Aaliyah had slipped beyond his control, and the world was watching every second. You can't stay here forever, child. Pastor Elijah's warm voice rumbled as he placed a hand on Aaliyah's shoulder. She sat on the wooden steps of her grandmother's old house, her wedding gown bundled beside her, like a ghost she couldn't shake. The small southern town was nothing like the glittering Montgomery estate she had just escaped. Here, crickets sang in the night, and the stars stretched wide and free. I don't want to go back, Aaliyah whispered, her voice breaking. Not after what he did to my parents. Not after the way he looked at me, Pastor Elijah Freeman, a broad-shouldered man in his 60s with kind eyes, and a preacher's calm, nodded. He had been her grandmother's friend for decades, and had known Aaliyah since she was a little girl. Then don't. But running away isn't enough. You've got to decide who you are now. Aaliyah lowered her head, her heart still racing from the chaos she left behind. Back in the city, Marcus paced their small living room, his voice rising. We should have never let her marry into that family. I knew Montgomery pride would break her. Renee sat at the kitchen table, her hands trembling around a cup of tea. She wanted to protect us. She thought this marriage would give us a better life. Imani slammed her fist against the counter. And look where that got her. Humiliated, broken, gone. If Derek tries to drag her back, I swear. Her words cut off when she saw her father's face. Marcus's jaw was tight, his eyes glassy. For the first time, he looked older, defeated. I should have stopped it, he muttered. I should have protected her. Meanwhile, Derek sat in his glass office overlooking the city skyline. The scandal hadn't cooled. If anything, it burned hotter. His phone buzzed non-stop with reporters demanding answers. Investors were already threatening to pull their support. "Find her!" Derek snapped at his private investigator over the phone. "I don't care how. Just bring her back." But beneath his fury, shame gnawed at him. The image of Aaliyah's tear-stained face haunted him in the dark silence of his penthouse. Across town, Jordan Blake leaned back in his leather chair, watching the news replay Aaliyah's dramatic exit. His lips curved into a slow smile. Jordan had been Derek's childhood friend once, until business and ambition turned them into bitter rivals. Where Derek inherited billions, Jordan built his empire with his own hands. Now, watching Aaliyah run from the altar on live television, he saw an opportunity. "She deserves better than him," he murmured, "and I'll make sure she knows it." Jordan's assistant glanced at him nervously. "Are you saying you're going after her?" Jordan's smile widened. "Oh, I don't just want her. I want everything Montgomery thinks he owns." In her grandmother's quiet home, Aaliyah closed her eyes and drew a shaky breath. The air smelled of pine and old wood, nothing like the suffocating perfume of wealth she'd left behind. For the first time in days, she felt like herself again. But the world wasn't done with her. Not Derek, not Vanessa, not even fate. And somewhere in the shadows, Jordan Blake had already set his eyes on her. The morning after the disastrous wedding was unlike any other Derek Montgomery had ever lived through. For years, his name had commanded respect, his image carefully crafted as the untouchable billionaire heir. But today, it was plastered across every news outlet in the country, his downfall replayed in slow motion for the world to savor. "Runaway bride humiliates billionaire at altar," screamed the front page of the New York Sentinel. "Arrogant groom mocks bride's parents, bride flees in tears," read another. On social media, hashtags trended worldwide. Hashtag vanishing bride, hashtag Montgomery humiliated, hashtag justice for Aaliyah. Clips of Aaliyah's tear-stained face and Derek's cruel laughter had gone viral. Memes were everywhere. Side-by-side photos of Marcus's simple suit and Derek's arrogant smirk, with captions like, "One has dignity, the other has only money." Derek sat at the head of the long mahogany table in the Montgomery corporate boardroom. His jaw was tight, his eyes bloodshot. Around him, executives whispered and shuffled papers, but no one dared speak first. The silence stretched until finally one of the board members cleared his throat. "Mr. Montgomery, the scandal has shaken investor confidence. 3 major partners are reconsidering their contracts. If we don't reassure the market, the company's stock may—" He trailed off, shifting uncomfortably under Derek's glare. Derek slammed his palm against the table, making several men flinch. "It's a wedding, not a war. Do you think I'll lose everything because some ungrateful girl got cold feet?" Another voice, timid but steady, responded. "Sir, it isn't just her leaving. The footage shows you mocking her parents. The public perception is, well, brutal." Derek's eyes narrowed. He wanted to snap, to crush them under his pride, but the words caught in his throat. For once, he didn't have a defense. Later that evening, in the privacy of his penthouse, Derek poured himself a glass of scotch and stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The skyline glittered like diamonds, but he felt no pride in it. His empire was still intact, yes, but his image, the thing Vanessa had drilled into him since he was a boy, was crumbling. The door opened and Vanessa Montgomery swept in, as elegant and venomous as ever. Her diamond necklace caught the light, her smile tight. "Derek, I warned you about her." she said smoothly, walking across the room like she owned it. That girl was never strong enough for this family. Look at what she's done to us. To you, Derek downed the scotch in one swallow. She embarrassed me in front of the world. No, Vanessa corrected sharply, her manicured finger raised. You embarrassed yourself. And now we must clean it up, she set a file on the table. The press is eating her up as a victim. We'll flip the story. We'll say she was unstable, unfaithful, unworthy. Within a week, no one will even remember her name. Derek turned slowly, his voice cold. Don't you dare touch her name. Vanessa's eyebrows lifted in surprise. You defend her? After what she did to you? His jaw tightened. I don't care what she did. I'll bring her back. One way or another. While Derek wrestled with shame and anger, Aaliyah's story spread like wildfire across the internet. Videos of her running down the aisle in tears became symbols of defiance against arrogance. Strangers she'd never met called her the girl who stood up for her family's dignity, and one man in particular paid close attention. Jordan Blake sat in his modern office, a glass of wine in hand, as he watched the clips play on his tablet. His dark eyes gleamed with satisfaction. This is it, Jordan murmured to himself, the great Derek Montgomery finally bleeding. He leaned back, recalling Aaliyah's face. He remembered meeting her once, briefly, at a gala months ago. She had been quiet, polite, almost invisible among the glittering elite, but now the world saw her, and Jordan saw an opportunity. She deserves better, he whispered, a slow smile curving his lips. And I'll make sure she knows it. His assistant looked uneasy. Sir, are you suggesting? Jordan's voice hardened. I'm not suggesting. I'm declaring war. If I win her heart, I take more than the girl. I take Derek's pride, his legacy, his empire. Back in her grandmother's small house, Aaliyah tried to piece her world back together. She had changed into simple clothes, but the memory of the gown, the whispers, and Derek's cruel laughter clung to her like a shadow. Pastor Elijah visited often, bringing meals and comfort. You did what most women would be too afraid to do, he told her gently one evening. You stood up. You chose dignity over chains. That is strength, Aaliyah, even if you don't feel it now. But strength didn't ease the ache in her chest when she thought of her father's humiliated face, her mother's tears. She wanted to move forward, but the past clung tightly, and though she tried to forget Derek Montgomery, she could not escape the truth. The man she left at the altar would not let her go easily. In the city, Derek stood before a wall of flashing cameras, his face cold, his voice even colder. This story is not over. My fiancée will return to me. She belongs with me. But across town, Jordan Blake raised his glass to the screen and whispered, Not if I take her first. The war for Aaliyah's heart, and for the Montgomery legacy, had begun. The air in the Carter home was thick with silence. Renee Carter sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a chipped coffee mug that had long gone cold. Her eyes were red from tears, but there was something deeper than grief behind them, something she had kept buried for years. Marcus stood near the window, staring out at the small street below. He hadn't spoken in minutes, his mind replaying every moment of Derek Montgomery's cruelty at the wedding. His pride had taken a blow he couldn't ignore. Imani paced the living room, restless. We can't just sit here pretending everything's fine, she muttered. Derek humiliated us in front of the whole world. And now the reporters won't leave us alone. Someone has to fight back, Renee finally spoke, her voice quiet, almost trembling. There are things you don't understand, Imani. Things about the Montgomerys. Imani frowned. What do you mean? Renee's gaze drifted to Aaliyah, who sat silently at the far end of the table. Her daughter looked tired, her hair pulled back, her hands folded in her lap, the runaway bride who had become the subject of a national scandal. "Aaliyah," Renee whispered, "there's something I should have told you long ago." She took a shaky breath. "Years ago, when I was young, I worked for the Montgomery family." Aaliyah's eyes lifted, confused. "Worked for them? You mean—" "I was a maid," Renee admitted, her cheeks flushing with old shame. "I was only 18. It was supposed to be temporary, just a way to save money, but I stayed longer than I should have. I saw things in that house, secrets, and I should have told you before, but I didn't want you to carry my mistakes." Imani stopped pacing, her voice sharp. "Mistakes? What kind of mistakes, Mama?" Renee looked down at her hands, twisting the mug. "I worked closely under Derek's father, Charles Montgomery. He was a complicated man, powerful, strict, but also kind, kinder than Vanessa ever wanted anyone to believe. Aaliyah's heart thudded. "Why are you telling me this now?" Renee's lips trembled. "Because I fear history is repeating itself, and Vanessa, she was in that house long before the world knew her as Charles' wife. She was ruthless even then, always scheming, always watching." Later that night, Marcus slipped out to clear his head. The weight of humiliation at the wedding pressed heavily on him, but his pride burned hotter when he thought of Derek's insults. He stopped at the corner store, overhearing two men talking outside. "Vanessa Montgomery," one of them whispered, their voices low but urgent. "She's at it again, meeting with lawyers, trying to lock down the estate. Word is, she's hiding something big." Marcus froze in the shadows. He clenched his jaw. Vanessa's name, again. The same woman who had mocked his family, who had always treated Aaliyah like dirt. He knew she was dangerous, but this sounded bigger than spite. When he returned home, he didn't tell Renee right away. He just sat in silence, staring at his calloused hands, wondering how deep the Montgomery rot went. Meanwhile, upstairs in her bedroom, Aaliyah searched through her late grandmother's cedar chest. She wanted comfort, but instead, her fingers brushed against a folded envelope buried beneath old quilts. Inside, she found a faded black and white photograph. Her breath caught. The picture showed a young Renee, no older than Aaliyah was now, smiling shyly in a maid's uniform, and beside her stood Charles Montgomery, Derek's late father, tall and distinguished. His hand rested gently on Renee's shoulder, almost familiar. Aaliyah's mind raced. Why would her mother hide this? What did it mean? She slipped the photograph into her journal, her heart pounding. At that same hour, in a sleek downtown office, Vanessa Montgomery sat across from two sharp-eyed lawyers. The table between them was littered with documents and estate files. "You're certain no one can contest Charles's will?" she demanded. One lawyer cleared his throat. "The assets are secured under your management, Mrs. Montgomery, but if anyone were to prove certain personal relationships, it could complicate matters." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "There will be no complications. If anyone tries, they'll be destroyed." She leaned back, her voice dripping venom. "Aaliyah Carter thinks she can embarrass my stepson and walk away clean. She doesn't know the half of what she stepped into, and if her family so much as breathes a word about the past, I'll bury them with the truth." Her laughter echoed coldly in the office, sending a chill down even the lawyers' spines. Back in the small southern town, Aaliyah sat by her window, staring at the photograph again. Her mother's young face looked so innocent, so different from the weary woman she knew now. The weight of questions pressed down on her. That's when she heard the faint knock on the door. She hesitated before opening it. No one was there, just an envelope lying on the porch. Her hands shook as she picked it up. The paper was thick, the handwriting elegant but unfamiliar. She opened it carefully, scanning the words inside. The Montgomerys are not what they seem. Your mother knows more than she's telling you. If you value your future, dig deeper, before it's too late. No signature, no return address. Aaliyah's breath hitched. She looked around the quiet street, but no one was there. Only the wind carried the sound of crickets and the rustle of leaves. Her pulse quickened. Whoever had left this letter knew something her mother hadn't said, something that connected her to Derek's world more deeply than she wanted to believe. Clutching the letter and the photograph, Aaliyah sank onto the edge of her bed. The scandal at the wedding had only been the beginning. Behind it lay decades of secrets, betrayal, and a truth that threatened to tear both families apart, and she wasn't sure she was ready to face it. Sunday morning sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of the old wooden church. Dust motes floated in the air as the choir's voices lifted in hymn, warm and steady. It was the same church Aaliyah had come to since childhood, the one place where she felt safe, even when the rest of the world pressed in on her. She sat in the last pew, her Bible closed on her lap. She wasn't really listening to the sermon. Her mind was elsewhere, on her parents' faces at the wedding, on Derek's cruel laughter, on the letter that had mysteriously appeared on her grandmother's porch. Her fingers traced the photograph hidden in her bag, her young mother standing beside Charles Montgomery, Derek's late father. Every time she looked at it, questions pressed harder on her chest. "You don't belong in his world," she whispered under her breath. "But then why does his world keep finding you?" The final hymn ended. Pastor Elijah made the sign of blessing, and people began to rise, filing out of the pews. Aaliyah lingered. She wasn't ready to return home to more questions and whispers. That's when she felt someone watching her. She turned and froze. Jordan Blake leaned casually against the doorway, dressed in a tailored navy suit, his confident smile a sharp contrast to the humble setting. His eyes locked onto hers, dark and steady. "Aaliyah Carter," he said softly, his voice smooth like velvet. "I thought I might find you here." Her chest tightened. "What are you doing here, Jordan?" He walked slowly down the aisle, hands in his pockets, moving like he owned the room. "Checking on you. After everything that happened, I thought you could use a friend." She stiffened. "You're Derek's rival. You showing up here isn't friendship. It's strategy." Jordan chuckled. "You're sharper than most give you credit for. But maybe it can be both." They sat in the empty pew, the sunlight falling between them. Jordan studied her carefully. "I watched the footage," he admitted. "What Derek did to your parents. It was unforgivable. And yet, even humiliated, you walked away with dignity." "That's strength," Aaliyah shook her head. "Strength? I ran away like a coward." "No," Jordan countered firmly. "You refused to let a man with too much money and too little respect own you. That's courage, and that's why I came." He leaned closer. "Let me help you. You don't have to depend on Derek or his empire. I can give you independence, money to rebuild your family's life, away from his shadow. I can give you—" His voice softened, a kind of love that isn't chained to pride and arrogance. The words hung heavy in the air. Aaliyah's throat tightened. "You don't even know me." Jordan smiled faintly. "I know enough. I know you deserve more than being humiliated by a man who doesn't value you. I know you deserve to be lifted up, not torn down." For a fleeting moment her heart stirred. Jordan was everything Derek wasn't, gentle in his tone, steady in his gaze, offering her choice instead of control. But another part of her hesitated. "Jordan," she whispered, "I can't just run from one man's shadow into another's light. I need to stand on my own, His expression flickered, something between admiration and frustration. I respect that. But remember this, Derek won't stop hunting you. He can't stand the thought of losing control. If you wait too long, you may not get the chance to choose your future at all. Miles away, Derek Montgomery sat in the back of a black SUV parked discreetly near the churchyard. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on the front steps where he'd been told Aaliyah would be. His investigator had delivered the address earlier that morning. He could have stormed inside, demanded she return, reminded her of the power he held. But for the first time in his life, Derek hesitated. He saw the church doors open. Aaliyah stepped out, her face lifted to the sun. And then, moments later, Jordan Blake followed behind her, his hand brushing her arm in quiet reassurance. Derek's fist slammed against the seat. "Jordan!" he growled through clenched teeth. "Of course he's here." The driver glanced nervously in the mirror. "Do you want me to pull up, sir?" Derek's eyes darkened. "Not yet. Let her feel safe. Let him think he's winning. I'll choose the right moment." But inside, a storm raged. Seeing Aaliyah with his rival was more unbearable than all the headlines combined. Later that night, in a dimly lit penthouse suite, Vanessa Montgomery poured herself a glass of wine as one of her informants delivered a report. "Jordan Blake was seen with Aaliyah Carter today," the man said, "at her grandmother's church." They spoke for nearly an hour, Vanessa's lips curved into a slow, dangerous smile. Of course, the snake slithers in when the lion falters. She lifted her glass, her eyes gleaming. "Derek must never hear this from anyone but me. He needs to know Jordan isn't just after his company, he's after his bride, and nothing enrages a Montgomery more than betrayal." The man nodded and left. Vanessa sipped her wine, her mind already weaving threads of manipulation. She had no love for Aaliyah, but she despised Jordan even more. If she could set Derek against him, their rivalry would destroy them both, and Vanessa would be left to pick through the ruins. Back in her room, Aaliyah sat on the bed, with her journal open, her pen hovering above the page. She replayed Jordan's words over and over. "I can give you independence. I can give you love." She should have felt flattered. She should have felt hopeful. Instead, she felt trapped between two storms. One called Derek, the other called Jordan. Her sister Imani's voice echoed in her memory. "Don't let any of them define you, sis." "You're stronger than that." Aaliyah closed her journal and whispered to the night. "I don't want to be saved. I want to be free," but freedom, she knew, would not come easily. Not with Derek watching from the shadows, not with Jordan circling like a hawk, and not with Vanessa pulling strings behind closed doors. The battle for her heart and her family's future had only just begun. The night air was heavy with the scent of pine and earth. Crickets sang in the tall grass around the old wooden house where Aaliyah now lived with her grandmother. For the first time in days, she felt at peace. She had spent the evening helping her grandmother sort through linens, then writing in her journal by lamplight. The quiet of the town was so different from the chaos she had left behind. But peace never lasted long when your past refused to let you go. Outside, the low growl of a black SUV's engine broke the silence. Its headlights swept across the gravel road before dimming. The vehicle parked discreetly by the trees, almost hidden from view. From the back seat stepped Derek Montgomery, tall, broad-shouldered, his designer coat glinting under the moonlight. He stood still for a moment, his eyes fixed on the house. His pulse pounded as he remembered the last time he saw Aaliyah's face, tear-streaked, furious as she ran from him down the aisle. Shame twisted his gut, but pride pushed it back. "I'll make her listen," he muttered. "She owes me that much." At the same moment, Imani Carter was returning from the corner store, a bag of snacks in hand. She froze when she saw the SUV parked near the house. Her stomach dropped when Derek's tall frame emerged from the shadows. "Oh, hell no," she whispered. Dropping the bag, she marched across the gravel. "What are you doing here?" Derek turned, his eyes narrowing. "Imani." "Don't Imani me," she snapped, her voice low but laced with fire. "You think you can just show up here, after humiliating my parents and breaking my sister's heart? You're out of your mind." His jaw tightened. "This isn't your business. I came for Aaliyah. She doesn't want to see you." "That's not your decision," he growled. Their voices carried across the quiet yard. Inside the house, Aaliyah looked up from her journal, frowning. She rose quickly and crossed to the window. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw him, Derek, standing in the moonlight, clashing with her sister. Her breath caught. Part of her wanted to slam the window shut and pretend he wasn't there. Another part, the part that remembered the nights he had held her, the rare moments when he had smiled without arrogance, ached. Finally, she grabbed her shawl and stepped outside. "Enough," Aaliyah said, her voice steady, though her heart thundered. Imani turned, her fists clenched. "Sis, don't talk to him. He doesn't deserve. I'll handle this." Aaliyah's eyes held her sister's, until Imani, reluctantly, stepped back, muttering under her breath. Now it was just the two of them, Derek and Aaliyah, standing under the moon, the silence between them charged. Derek's lips parted, but his words stumbled at first. "Aaliyah, He cleared his throat, adjusting his collar like he was in a boardroom. "I came to apologize." Her eyes flashed. "Apologize?" "Yes," he pressed on. "I shouldn't have laughed at your parents." It was wrong, he shifted uncomfortably, but then his pride slipped back in. "But you embarrassed me. You left me at the altar in front of the whole city. Do you have any idea what that's done to me?" Aaliyah's breath caught in disbelief. "What it's done to you?" "Derek, my parents cried themselves to sleep that night. My father walked me down that aisle with pride, and you crushed him with one sentence. You humiliated the people who gave me everything." Derek's voice rose. "And you humiliated me. Do you think I can just walk back into the world after being abandoned like that? Investors are threatening me. My name, my family's empire, is being dragged through the mud." Her hands trembled, but her voice was strong. "Maybe it should be. Maybe you should feel what it's like to be treated as less than human, just like you treated me, just like you treated them." Derek's face twisted. For a moment, pain flickered there, real pain, but his pride smothered it. "I'm still your husband-to-be. And I don't care what anyone says. You're coming back to me." Aaliyah's eyes hardened. "I'm not your property, Derek. I'm not some deal you can salvage. If you can't understand that love is respect, then you'll never have me." The silence was deafening. The creak of footsteps broke it. Pastor Elijah emerged from the porch, his voice calm but firm. "That's enough." He stepped between them, his presence commanding. "Derek Montgomery, I've watched you since you were a boy trailing behind your father. You've grown into a man with wealth, yes, but no wisdom. Love is not a transaction. Marriage is not a merger. If you want her back, you must first strip yourself of arrogance and learn humility." Derek's jaw tightened, his fists at his sides. "You think I don't know that? You think I wanted any of this?" Pastor Elijah's eyes pierced him. "You wanted control. And control will never win her heart." Imani stepped forward again, her glare fierce. "You heard him. Leave, you're not welcome here." Derek turned back to Aaliyah. For a long moment he said nothing. His eyes searched hers, and for once there was no smirk, no mask, only desperation. But when he finally spoke, his pride returned like armor. "Fine. You won't come willingly? Then I'll find another way. I'll win you back by force if necessary. Aaliyah flinched. That's not love, Derek. That's obsession. He didn't answer. He stormed back to the SUV, his coat whipping in the night air. The engine roared, and moments later, he was gone. The yard was silent again, but the peace was shattered. Aaliyah wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders, her body trembling. Pastor Elijah placed a hand on her arm. You have a storm coming, child, and you must decide how you will stand in it. Aaliyah looked up at the stars, her heart heavy. She knew Derek would return, and next time he wouldn't come alone. Imani Carter stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of her blouse with trembling fingers. She had never faced cameras before, never spoken into a sea of microphones. But tonight wasn't about nerves, it was about justice. Behind her, Marcus's voice rumbled, heavy with disapproval. This is a mistake, Imani. Going against Derek Montgomery in public? You'll put a target on our whole family. Imani spun around, her eyes blazing. Daddy, he already put a target on us. He laughed at you, at Mama, in front of the whole world. And now they treat us like nobodies while he hides in his tower. Somebody has to tell the truth. Marcus's jaw clenched. He wanted to argue, but deep down he knew his daughter's fire was the same fire that had carried him through years of hardship. He sighed and sank into a chair. Just be careful, baby girl. Aaliyah, quiet in the corner, looked up with tear-filled eyes. She hadn't slept properly since Derek's visit outside the house. Are you sure about this? She whispered. Imani bent down, taking her sister's hand. Yes, you stayed silent at the altar. Now let me be your voice. Hours later, the press conference was already buzzing. Reporters packed into the small hall at the community center, their cameras ready, microphones thrust forward. The Carter family had been quiet since the scandal, and the world was desperate to hear from them. When Imani stepped up to the podium, a hush fell. She was young, bold, and unafraid, exactly the opposite of how the Montgomery Empire expected a poor girl to act. She gripped the edges of the podium, her voice steady. My name is Imani Carter. You know me as the sister of the bride who ran away from Derek Montgomery. But tonight I'm here not as her sister, but as the daughter of Marcus and Renee Carter, the parents Derek publicly insulted and humiliated. A ripple of whispers filled the hall. Cameras zoomed in. Imani's eyes burned with determination. You've heard Derek's side. You've seen the headlines. But what you haven't seen is the truth, that at that altar, in front of God, and hundreds of guests, Derek Montgomery looked at my parents, hard-working, honest, proud people, and mocked them for being poor. He called my father's suit embarrassing. He laughed at my mother's modest dress. Gasps echoed. Reporters scribbled furiously. Imani's voice rose, fierce. Money does not buy dignity. Power does not give anyone the right to trample over those who have less. Derek Montgomery humiliated my parents not because they deserved it, but because arrogance blinded him. And Aaliyah, my sister, walked away because she chose her family's honor over his fortune. The hall erupted in applause. Reporters shouted questions. Will Aaliyah return to him? Are you accusing Derek of class discrimination? Imani raised her hand, silencing the crowd. This is bigger than one failed wedding. This is about respect. If Derek Montgomery thinks he can insult us, control us, or spin the story to make my sister look weak, he's wrong. We will not be silenced. The speech hit the internet within minutes. By morning, it was everywhere. On Twitter, #ImaniSpeaks trended at #1. Carter family deserves justice, flooded feeds. Clips of Imani's fiery words went viral, shared with captions like, the girl who stood up to a billionaire, and respect is worth more than money. On TikTok, young women recreated her speech word for word, applauding her courage. On Instagram, celebrities posted messages of support for Aaliyah. The Carter sisters had become a symbol of dignity against wealth's cruelty. But in the Montgomery penthouse, Derek's fury was volcanic. He threw the remote across the room, shattering it against the wall. She thinks she can drag my name through the mud? That little brat. His assistant cowered near the door. Sir, the public sentiment is shifting rapidly. The more this spreads, the harder it will be to control the narrative. Derek's eyes narrowed dangerously. Then we'll shut her down. But Vanessa was already a step ahead. She sat calmly on the sofa, sipping her wine, her diamonds catching the city lights. Relax, Derek. This is exactly what I warned you about. That family will never stop embarrassing you unless we crush them. Derek turned to her, seething. How? Vanessa's smile was cold. Leave Imani to me. I know exactly how to deal with mouthy little sisters. Back at the Carter home, Aaliyah scrolled through the flood of posts. She was overwhelmed, pride mixed with fear. You did it, she told Imani softly. The whole world is listening now. Imani grinned, though exhaustion showed in her eyes. Let them listen. Maybe now Derek will learn he can't step on us without consequences. But Pastor Elijah, who had come by with groceries, frowned deeply. Child, you've stirred a firestorm. The Montgomerys are not people who forgive easily. Be ready for the backlash. Aaliyah's hands tightened around her phone. She knew he was right. Meanwhile, Jordan Blake watched the press conference replay in his sleek office, a slow smile spreading across his face. He admired Imani's courage, almost as much as Aaliyah's dignity. He dialed a number. Yes, push Imani's speech to every outlet. Buy ad slots if you have to. I want her face everywhere by morning. His assistant hesitated. Sir, won't that expose your involvement? Jordan chuckled. Not if we do it quietly. Let the world believe the Carter sisters rose on their own. I'll be the invisible hand guiding them. And when the Montgomerys fall, I'll be there to lift the Carters higher. He poured himself a glass of wine, eyes gleaming with satisfaction. This is only the beginning. But across town, Vanessa was already plotting her countermove. She leaned across a mahogany desk, speaking to a tabloid editor she had on payroll. I want dirt on Imani Carter. Real or fabricated, I don't care. She wants to be the voice of the people? Then let's turn her into a scandal waiting to happen. By the time I'm done, she won't dare open her mouth again. The editor nodded nervously, pocketing the thick envelope Vanessa slid across the desk. Destroy her, Vanessa said coldly, before she destroys us. That night, as the Carters slept, Aaliyah dreamed of fire, flames consuming her wedding gown, her parents' faces disappearing into smoke, Derek's voice booming like thunder. You belong to me. She woke with a gasp, sweat on her forehead. Outside her window, the night was silent, but she felt it deep in her bones. The battle wasn't over, it was only just beginning. And this time, it wasn't only about her and Derek. It was about her family, her dignity, and a war against an empire determined to break them. The Montgomery boardroom, once a place of power and prestige, now felt like a battlefield. Derek sat at the head of the long mahogany table, his tie loosened, his expression a mask of fury. Screens around the room showed plummeting stock graphs, red arrows dropping lower by the hour. 3 investors pulled out this morning, one executive reported nervously. The Chicago project is frozen, and the Dubai deal collapsed, another cut in grimly. They don't want their brand associated with scandal. Derek slammed his fist on the table, making several of them jump. This is temporary. Do you hear me? Temporary. The Montgomery name will not be destroyed by one runaway bride. A shaky voice from the far end spoke up. With respect, mister. Montgomery, it's not just the runaway bride, it's your image. The Carter sisters' speech went viral. Public sympathy is with them. Our partners fear this could damage their reputation by association. The room fell silent. For the first time, Derek realized his power wasn't absolute. Money couldn't silence the internet. Influence couldn't buy back trust. That evening, Vanessa orchestrated a private dinner at the family's luxurious townhouse. The table gleamed with crystal glasses and golden candlesticks. But beneath the glitter, tension simmered. Derek pushed his food around the plate, his appetite gone. Vanessa, dressed in a silk gown that shimmered like armor, watched him closely. You're unraveling, she said flatly, and if you don't take control, everything your father built will collapse. Derek glared at her. You think I don't know that? Then act like it. She leaned forward, her voice sharp. The solution is simple. Marry someone else, someone worthy, a woman with wealth, breeding, status, not a poor girl who runs away and makes a fool of you. His jaw tightened. I don't want anyone else. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. Want? This isn't about want. This is about survival. If you don't remarry, the board will lose confidence, investors will scatter, and the vultures will circle. Jordan Blake will snatch up everything we've worked for. Is that what you want? Derek's voice was low, dangerous. Don't lecture me about survival, Vanessa. You've been feeding off this family's power for decades. For the first time, her smile faltered. Meanwhile, in her grandmother's small house, Aliyah sat at the kitchen table with the faded photograph in her hand. Renee moved quietly behind her, chopping vegetables for dinner, but Aliyah's voice cut through the silence. Why didn't you tell me? Renee froze. Tell you what? Aliyah placed the photograph on the table. Her mother's young face smiled back from the past, standing beside Charles Montgomery. That you worked for him. That you knew him, Renee's hands trembled. She set the knife down and turned slowly. I told you I was a maid. You were more than that, Aliyah whispered. Look at how he held you. That wasn't just an employer. What happened between you and Charles Montgomery? Renee's lips parted, then closed again. For a long moment she seemed lost in memory. Charles was kind to me, kinder than anyone else in that house. He saw me when no one else did, but Vanessa hated me for it. She made sure I left before it became anything more. Aliyah's chest tightened. So Vanessa was there. Even back then, Renee nodded, her eyes heavy with regret. She was his mistress long before she was his wife. She clawed her way into power, and she's been fighting to hold on to it ever since. The revelation struck Aliyah like a blow. The woman who had mocked her at the altar wasn't just cruel. She was part of a long history of manipulation, one that had entangled her family decades ago. 2 days later, Derek arrived at a downtown charity event, determined to show strength. But as he stepped out of his car, he was met not with admiration, but with Marcus Carter standing tall at the entrance. The older man's posture was firm, his chin high. His modest suit looked out of place among the tuxedos, but his dignity made him shine brighter than any diamond. Derek stiffened. What are you doing here? Marcus's voice carried across the crowd. I came to look you in the eye. You humiliated me in front of the world, called me a joke because I can't afford what you can. But let me tell you something, Derek Montgomery, you'll never be half the man I am, because money can buy you a mansion, but it can't buy you respect. Gasps rippled through the guests. Cameras flashed as reporters swarmed. Derek's face burned. You think you can confront me here? Marcus's eyes blazed. I'm not afraid of you anymore. You've taken enough from my family. You won't take our dignity too. The confrontation made headlines the next morning. Carter Patriarch confronts billionaire Groom in public showdown. And for the first time, Derek felt the ground beneath him crack. That night, alone in his penthouse, Derek poured himself another drink, but Vanessa's voice echoed in his head. Marry someone worthy. Marcus's voice echoed too. You'll never be half the man I am. He looked around at the glittering emptiness of his home and felt something he'd never admitted before: loneliness. His phone buzzed. Vanessa's name lit up the screen. For once, he didn't answer. He let it ring until it stopped, because deep down he was beginning to see the truth. Vanessa wasn't saving him. She was chaining him, and if he didn't break free soon, he would lose everything, not just his empire, but the last shred of humanity he had left. The attic smelled of cedar and dust, the air thick with the weight of forgotten years. Aaliyah climbed carefully up the narrow stairs, the flashlight in her hand, casting long shadows on boxes and trunks. Her grandmother had lived her whole life in this house, filling every corner with memories. Now, Aaliyah searched not for comfort, but for answers. She knelt beside a heavy trunk at the far end. The lock had rusted, but after a firm tug, it snapped open. Inside were quilts, photographs, and bundles of letters tied with ribbon. But beneath them all, hidden under layers of fabric, lay a leather-bound folder. Her fingers trembled as she pulled it out. The folder was worn, the corners frayed, but stamped across the front in faded gold letters were the words, "Property Deeds." Heart pounding, she opened it. Pages of legal documents spread before her. Maps of acres of land, signatures, notary seals. At the bottom of one page, she froze. This property is registered to Mary Louise Carter, boundaries extending into Montgomery County. Her grandmother's land wasn't just family property, it was legally tied to the Montgomery estate. Suddenly, her mind flashed back to her grandmother's voice years ago, rocking her on the porch as cicadas hummed in the trees. "One day, this land will protect you, child. Don't let anyone take it from you." She hadn't understood then. Now, the words chilled her to the bone. Downstairs, Renee sat in the kitchen, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. When Aaliyah walked in with the folder, Renee's face drained of color. "Where did you find that?" she whispered. "In the attic," Aaliyah replied. "Mama, why didn't you tell me?" Renee's lips trembled. "Because I wanted you free of all this. That land, it's ours by right, but Vanessa," she swallowed hard. "She tried to steal it years ago." Aaliyah's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Renee leaned back, staring into the distance. "When your grandmother got sick, Vanessa came around. She was Charles Montgomery's mistress then, but she already had her claws in his estate. She pressured us to sell the land, claimed it was worthless. When we refused, she forged papers, tried to claim it for herself. Your grandmother fought her, but it nearly broke her spirit." Tears welled in Aaliyah's eyes. "And now?" Renee looked at the folder with fear. "Now that land may be the only weapon we have. But be careful, Aaliyah. Weapons cut both ways." Later that evening, Aaliyah sat on the church steps with Pastor Elijah. The folder rested beside her. "I don't know what to do," she confessed. "This land could mean freedom, but it could also drag us deeper into the Montgomery's world." Pastor Elijah placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Your destiny is bigger than marriage, Aaliyah. Bigger than Derek. Bigger than Vanessa. This land, it's not just soil and deeds, it's legacy. Your grandmother fought to keep it because she knew one day you'd need it. The question is, will you use it as a shield or as a sword?" Aaliyah stared at the folder. The weight of it felt heavier than any ring. The next day, Jordan Blake appeared at the churchyard. His arrival, as always, seemed deliberate, calculated. He found Aliyah standing beneath the oak tree, the deeds clutched in her hand. "So, it's true," he said smoothly. "The Carter land is tied to Montgomery property." No wonder Vanessa's desperate. Her eyes narrowed. "How do you know about this?" He smirked. "I have ears everywhere. And I know opportunity when I see it. Aliyah, with this land, you have leverage. You can bring Vanessa to her knees. You could sue the Montgomerys for everything they've stolen." Aliyah's stomach knotted. "Sue them? You think I want more scandal?" "I think you want justice," Jordan countered. "I think you're tired of running. With me by your side, you could win. I'll pay for the best lawyers. Together, we'll strip Vanessa of her power." For a moment, his voice was almost intoxicating, filled with promise. But behind him, Imani stepped forward, her eyes sharp. "Don't trust him, sis," she warned. "Jordan doesn't care about justice. He wants revenge on Derek, and he's using you to get it." Jordan's smile never faltered, but his eyes darkened. "Careful, Imani. I respect your fire, but don't confuse my motives. I may hate Derek, but I see Aliyah for who she truly is, a woman stronger than anyone realizes. She deserves more than being caught between a fool and his stepmother." Aliyah's breath caught. Part of her wanted to believe him. Another part heard Imani's warning loud and clear. Meanwhile, in the Montgomery penthouse, Derek overheard two board members whispering about the Carter land. His blood ran cold. "What land?" he demanded. They hesitated, then explained. "Your stepmother, years ago, there was a dispute. The Carter property overlaps with Montgomery County holdings. If Aliyah pursues it, she could challenge Vanessa's control of certain assets." Derek's fists clenched. Vanessa had hidden this from him. Again. When he confronted her later that night, Vanessa only smiled, sipping her wine. "It was insignificant. Why burden you with trifles?" Derek slammed his glass down. "Insignificant? If she sues, we lose everything. You kept this from me. Why?" Her smile turned cold. "Because power is not given, Derek. It's taken, and if Aliyah Carter thinks she can take it, she'll regret it." For the first time, Derek saw her not as his stepmother, not as his advisor, but as a viper coiled around his life. Back in her room, Aliyah spread the deeds across her bed. The documents seemed to glow under the lamplight. She could almost hear her grandmother's voice again. "Don't let anyone take it from you." Her hands shook as she whispered, "Maybe it's time to stop running." For the first time, the idea didn't terrify her. It thrilled her. The ballroom of the Regency Hotel glowed with chandeliers and polished marble floors. Flashbulbs lit the air as reporters crowded outside, covering what was billed as the Blake Foundation's annual charity gala. But everyone knew this year's gala wasn't just about charity, it was about war. Jordan Blake, dressed in a crisp black suit, stood at the podium, his smile easy, but his eyes sharp. "Tonight," he announced to the sea of wealthy donors and cameras, "we celebrate not just generosity, but vision. A vision of business leaders who treat people with dignity, who see value in integrity, not just profit." The crowd applauded, though some exchanged knowing looks. The line was a thinly veiled jab at Derek Montgomery. Jordan paused, letting the words hang before continuing. "Because what good is wealth if it comes at the cost of respect? What good is empire if it humiliates the very people who stand beside us?" Reporters scribbled furiously. Whispers rippled through the audience. Across town, Derek watched the live feed on a massive TV in his penthouse. His jaw tightened as Jordan's words cut deep. "He's using this to mock me," Derek muttered, pacing, using Aliyah as his excuse to climb higher. Vanessa lounged on the sofa, swirling her wine glass. And you're letting him win. Every headline tomorrow will read, Jordan Blake, the compassionate billionaire, Derek Montgomery, the cruel groom. Unless you fight back, Derek's eyes burned. How? Crush him financially, Vanessa purred. He's building his empire on shaky partnerships. Undercut his deals, buy out his investors, remind him that you are the Montgomery heir, and he is just an opportunist chasing your scraps. Derek turned away, fists clenching. He wanted to destroy Jordan, but part of him, buried deep, whispered a different truth. Jordan was winning not just in business, but in Aaliyah's heart. The next day, Aaliyah sat in the small-town diner with Imani, sipping sweet tea. The television on the wall replayed clips from the gala. Did you see that? Imani grinned, pointing at Jordan on screen. He's not afraid to call Derek out in front of the world. That's the kind of man you need, one who'll defend your honor, not trample it. Aaliyah shook her head. Imani, don't. Jordan's using me. I can feel it. Every time he talks about justice, it's tied to Derek. He doesn't just want to help me, he wants to destroy him. And maybe that's exactly what we need, Imani shot back. Derek humiliated us. Maybe it takes a man like Jordan to balance the scales. Aaliyah's heart tightened. She wanted to believe Jordan's intentions were pure, but every time she thought of his charming smile, she remembered Pastor Elijah's words. A sword can protect, or it can cut you. 2 nights later, Derek and Jordan found themselves face to face at a financial summit in New York. The press swarmed, hungry for drama. Cameras flashed as Derek stepped out of his car, his expression stone. Across the carpet, Jordan arrived moments later, his confidence radiating. "Mr. Montgomery!" a reporter shouted. "Jordan Blake says integrity matters more than profit. Do you have a response?" Derek's lips curled into a cold smile. "Integrity is meaningless without power. Anyone can play the hero when they don't have a kingdom to protect." Jordan laughed lightly, just loud enough for microphones to catch. "Or maybe kingdoms fall because their kings forget the people who built them." The crowd gasped, eating up every word. Then another reporter shouted, "What about Aaliyah Carter? Is she the reason for your feud?" Aaliyah's name cut through Derek like a blade. He spun toward Jordan, his voice sharp. "Don't you dare use her as your weapon." Jordan stepped closer, lowering his tone but ensuring every camera caught his words. "I'm not using her. I'm protecting her, from men like you." The crowd erupted, reporters shouted, the two titans stood chest to chest, their rivalry now a public spectacle. That evening, Aaliyah watched the confrontation replay on her phone, her stomach sinking. She could hear Derek's fury, see Jordan's smug calm, and all of it tied back to her. Renee sat beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Baby, don't let yourself become a pawn. These men are fighting for power, not love. Don't let either of them write your story." Aaliyah's eyes stung with tears. "But what if I can't escape it?" Renee squeezed her hand. "Then fight for your dignity. Not for them, but for you." Meanwhile, behind closed doors, Vanessa fanned the flames. She paced Derek's office, her voice sharp. "Jordan is humiliating you publicly. If you don't strike soon, the board will question your ability to lead. Do you want him stealing both your empire and your bride?" Derek glared at her. "You think I don't see what he's doing?" "Then act," she snapped. "Buy out his contracts. Sabotage his partnerships. Destroy him before he destroys you." But as Derek stared out the window, something stirred inside him. He saw Jordan's calm face in his mind, saw how Aaliyah's eyes softened around him, and for the first time, a terrifying thought crept in. What if she really would be happier with Jordan? He shook it off violently, slamming his fist on the desk. No, She's mine. But the doubt lingered, haunting him. That night, Derek poured himself a drink, staring into the glass. His mind drifted back to when he first met Aaliyah. Before the arrogance, before the scandal. She had been working at a charity event, her laughter genuine, her eyes full of warmth. She had offered him a plate of food without realizing who he was, and for once, someone had looked at him, not as a billionaire, but as a man. That memory cut deeper than any headline, because somewhere along the way, he had stopped being the man she saw that night, and become the tyrant she ran from. Across town, Jordan raised a glass of wine at his own gathering, his supporters cheering. To justice, he said smoothly, and to reminding the world that no empire is untouchable. But even as he toasted, his thoughts lingered on Aaliyah. He didn't just want to destroy Derek, he wanted her grace, her fire, her dignity, and he was determined to win her, no matter the cost. The headlines spread like wildfire, bold and merciless. Carter family, gold diggers or martyrs. The truth behind the runaway bride. Was Aaliyah after Montgomery money? Sister Imani's fiery speech exposed, a stunt funded by rivals? Every gossip blog, every social media account, every tabloid seemed to carry some variation of the same poisonous narrative. The Carters, once lifted by public sympathy, were now being painted as manipulative opportunists who had orchestrated the scandal to profit from Derek's humiliation. Imani slammed her phone down on the kitchen table, her hands shaking. This is Vanessa. It has to be. Nobody else would stoop this low. Marcus rubbed his temples, weary. She's powerful, Imani. She's got connections in every paper, every station. Fighting her head-on could destroy us. Then let her try, Imani snapped, fire flashing in her eyes. She doesn't scare me. But Aaliyah sat in silence, the headlines echoing in her mind. Each accusation felt like a dagger, twisting her guilt deeper. Her mother had been coughing for days, complaining of headaches, but still she smiled, still she told her daughters to be strong. Now, with the media painting them as liars, Aaliyah wondered if it was all too much. 2 nights later, the storm broke. Renee stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, her hands trembling. Sweat beaded on her forehead, though the room was cool. "Mama, sit down," Aaliyah urged, rushing to her side. "I'm fine," Renee insisted, but her voice wavered. She reached for the counter, missed, and collapsed onto the floor. "Mom!" Aaliyah screamed, dropping to her knees. Marcus rushed in, panic on his face. Imani grabbed the phone, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. "Stay with us, Mama! Stay with us!" The minutes stretched like hours until the ambulance arrived. As paramedics carried Renee out on a stretcher, Aaliyah held her mother's hand, whispering prayers through her tears. The hospital waiting room was cold, sterile, filled with the hum of machines and murmured conversations. Aaliyah sat with her head in her hands, her body shaking. Imani paced the floor, fury and fear battling in her eyes. Marcus sat silent, his weathered hands clasped tightly as if in prayer. Jordan arrived quietly, his presence almost a relief. He walked over to Aaliyah and placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "How is she?" "They don't know yet," Aaliyah whispered, her voice cracked. "This is my fault." "All of it. The stress, the lies, the humiliation. I brought this on her." "No," Jordan said firmly, kneeling in front of her. His eyes were steady, reassuring. "This is not your fault. This is Vanessa's cruelty and Derek's arrogance. Don't you carry their sins." Imani folded her arms, glaring toward the doors. "And when do we hit back? When do we stop letting them destroy us?" Jordan's gaze hardened. "Soon. Very soon." Across town, Vanessa sat in her lavish sitting room, sipping champagne. A trusted confidant, an editor of one of the tabloids, sat across from her, smirking at the day's headlines. "You've turned the tide," the editor said. "The Carters are the villains now. Public opinion is shifting back in Derek's favor." Vanessa's smile was sharp, cruel. "Good. Let the world believe they're desperate schemers. Let them choke on their new fame. And when Derek rises from this storm, they'll regret ever crossing me." She leaned back, her diamonds glittering under the light. "You see, darling, destroying Aliyah isn't enough. I have to break her family. Only then will Derek realize I was the only one who ever had his best interests at heart." Back at the hospital, hours dragged by. Aliyah sat clutching her mother's scarf, whispering silent prayers. She had just closed her eyes when a shadow fell across her. She looked up, and her breath caught. Derek stood in the doorway, holding a bouquet of expensive white lilies. His suit was immaculate, but his eyes betrayed exhaustion. "What are you doing here?" Imani snapped, stepping between him and Aliyah. "I came to see Renee," Derek said quietly. His voice lacked its usual arrogance. "I heard what happened." Imani's glare was icy. "She doesn't need your pity, or your flowers." But Aliyah rose slowly, her heart torn. "Let him speak, Imani." Derek's gaze locked on hers. "I didn't want this. I never wanted your family hurt. He faltered, for once unsure of himself. "I just wanted you back." Jordan, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. His voice was low but sharp. "This isn't about you, Derek. Renee is in there fighting for her health, and you're here making it about your guilt." Derek's eyes narrowed. "And you're here making it about your ambition." The air crackled with tension as the two men faced off in the sterile waiting room, their voices rising. "You humiliated her family," Jordan shot back. "And now you want to pretend you care?" "You don't love Aliyah. You just can't stand losing." "And you," Derek countered. "You see her as a pawn. You parade her family's pain to boost your image, to make yourself the hero. You don't care about her. You care about beating me." Both men turned toward Aliyah, who stood trembling between them. "Enough!" she shouted, her voice echoing through the room. "This isn't about either of you. This is about my mother, my family. Stop turning our pain into your battlefield." The room fell silent. Even Marcus looked up, pride flickering in his tired eyes. The nurse entered, breaking the tension. "Renee Carter is stable, but she'll need rest and monitoring. You may see her 2 at a time." Aliyah rushed to her mother's side, her heart aching with relief. Renee's eyes fluttered open, weak but alive. "I'm here, Mama," Aliyah whispered, holding her hand. Renee's lips curved into a faint smile. "You're stronger than you know, baby girl. Don't let them break you." Tears blurred Aliyah's vision. She kissed her mother's hand, silently vowing not to let Vanessa, or anyone, tear their family apart again. Outside the room, the waiting area buzzed with unspoken tension. Jordan leaned against the wall, watching Derek pace like a caged lion. "This isn't over," Derek muttered. Jordan smirked. "You're right." It's just beginning. Vanessa's web had been spun, trapping them all in a storm of lies, ambition, and betrayal. But for the first time, Aliyah wasn't just a victim caught in the threads. She was ready to tear them apart. The headlines spread like wildfire, bold and merciless. "Carter family, gold diggers or martyrs?" The truth behind the runaway bride. Was Aliyah after Montgomery money? Sister Imani's fiery speech exposed, a stunt funded by rivals? Every gossip blog, every social media account, every tabloid seemed to carry some variation of the same poisonous narrative. The Carters, once lifted by public sympathy, were now being painted as manipulative opportunists who had orchestrated the scandal to profit from Derek's humiliation. Imani slammed her phone down on the kitchen table, her hands shaking. This is Vanessa. It has to be. Nobody else would stoop this low. Marcus rubbed his temples, weary. She's powerful, Imani. She's got connections in every paper, every station. Fighting her head-on could destroy us. Then let her try, Imani snapped, fire flashing in her eyes. She doesn't scare me. But Aliyah sat in silence, the headlines echoing in her mind. Each accusation felt like a dagger, twisting her guilt deeper. Her mother had been coughing for days, complaining of headaches, but still she smiled. Still she told her daughters to be strong. Now, with the media painting them as liars, Aliyah wondered if it was all too much. 2 nights later, the storm broke. Renee stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, her hands trembling. Sweat beaded on her forehead, though the room was cool. "Mama, sit down," Aliyah urged, rushing to her side. "I'm fine," Renee insisted, but her voice wavered. She reached for the counter, missed, and collapsed onto the floor. "Mom!" Aliyah screamed, dropping to her knees. Marcus rushed in, panic on his face. Imani grabbed the phone, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. "Stay with us, Mama! Stay with us!" The minutes stretched like hours until the ambulance arrived. As paramedics carried Renee out on a stretcher, Aliyah held her mother's hand, whispering prayers through her tears. The hospital waiting room was cold, sterile, filled with the hum of machines and murmured conversations. Aliyah sat with her head in her hands, her body shaking. Imani paced the floor, fury and fear battling in her eyes. Marcus sat silent, his weathered hands clasped tightly as if in prayer. Jordan arrived quietly, his presence almost a relief. He walked over to Aliyah and placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "How is she?" "They don't know yet," Aliyah whispered, her voice cracked. "This is my fault. All of it. The stress, the lies, the humiliation. I brought this on her." "No," Jordan said firmly, kneeling in front of her. His eyes were steady, reassuring. "This is not your fault. This is Vanessa's cruelty and Derek's arrogance. Don't you carry their sins." Imani folded her arms, glaring toward the doors. "And when do we hit back? When do we stop letting them destroy us?" Jordan's gaze hardened. "Soon." Very soon, across town, Vanessa sat in her lavish sitting room, sipping champagne. A trusted confidant, an editor of one of the tabloids, sat across from her, smirking at the day's headlines. "You've turned the tide," the editor said. "The Carters are the villains now. Public opinion is shifting back in Derek's favor." Vanessa's smile was sharp, cruel. "Good. Let the world believe they're desperate schemers. Let them choke on their new fame. And when Derek rises from this storm, they'll regret ever crossing me." She leaned back, her diamonds glittering under the light. "You see, darling, destroying Aliyah isn't enough. I have to break her family. Only then will Derek realize I was the only one who ever had his best interests at heart." Back at the hospital, hours dragged by. Aliyah sat clutching her mother's scarf, whispering silent prayers. She had just closed her eyes when a shadow fell across her. She looked up, and her breath caught. Derek stood in the doorway, holding a bouquet of expensive white lilies. His suit was immaculate, but his eyes betrayed exhaustion. "What are you doing here?" Imani snapped, stepping between him and Aliyah. "I came to see Renee," Derek said quietly. His voice lacked its usual arrogance. "I heard what happened." Imani's glare was icy. "She doesn't need your pity, or your flowers." But Aliyah rose slowly, her heart torn. "Let him speak, Imani." Derek's gaze locked on hers. "I didn't want this. I never wanted your family hurt. He faltered, for once unsure of himself. I just wanted you back. Jordan, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. His voice was low but sharp. This isn't about you, Derek. Renee is in there fighting for her health, and you're here making it about your guilt. Derek's eyes narrowed. And you're here making it about your ambition. The air crackled with tension as the two men faced off in the sterile waiting room, their voices rising. You humiliated her family, Jordan shot back, and now you want to pretend you care? You don't love Aaliyah. You just can't stand losing. And you? Derek countered. You see her as a pawn. You parade her family's pain to boost your image, to make yourself the hero. You don't care about her. You care about beating me. Both men turned toward Aaliyah, who stood trembling between them. Enough, she shouted, her voice echoing through the room. This isn't about either of you. This is about my mother, my family. Stop turning our pain into your battlefield. The room fell silent. Even Marcus looked up, pride flickering in his tired eyes. The nurse entered, breaking the tension. Renee Carter is stable, but she'll need rest and monitoring. You may see her 2 at a time. Aaliyah rushed to her mother's side, her heart aching with relief. Renee's eyes fluttered open, weak but alive. I'm here, Mama, Aaliyah whispered, holding her hand. Renee's lips curved into a faint smile. You're stronger than you know, baby girl. Don't let them break you. Tears blurred Aaliyah's vision. She kissed her mother's hand, silently vowing not to let Vanessa, or anyone, tear their family apart again. Outside the room, the waiting area buzzed with unspoken tension. Jordan leaned against the wall, watching Derek pace like a caged lion. This isn't over, Derek muttered. Jordan smirked. You're right. It's just beginning. Vanessa's web had been spun, trapping them all in a storm of lies, ambition, and betrayal. But for the first time, Aaliyah wasn't just a victim caught in the threads. She was ready to tear them apart. The soft beep of hospital monitors filled the dim room as Aaliyah sat beside her mother's bed. Renee lay sleeping, her breathing shallow but steady. Aaliyah held her hand gently, her thumb brushing over her mother's fingers, as if to reassure herself she was still there. Outside in the corridor, nurses passed by, their voices carrying faintly through the door. Poor woman, one whispered. Imagine all this because of her daughter's runaway wedding. I heard they're just chasing money, another said. First humiliating the Montgomerys, now trying to play the victims. Aaliyah's stomach twisted. She bowed her head, letting the words wash over her like acid. Even here, even in her mother's weakest moment, the lies Vanessa had spun clung to them like poison. Tears pricked her eyes, but she wiped them away fiercely. No more. She couldn't keep letting their family be trampled. Later that morning, Imani walked in, arms crossed, eyes burning with energy. You're too quiet, sis. Too passive. Don't you see? They're dragging our name through the dirt while Vanessa sits on her throne. It's time you stop letting men decide who you are. Aaliyah looked up, startled by her sister's intensity. Imani leaned closer, her voice sharp but full of love. You are not just the bride who ran away. You are not Derek's victim or Jordan's trophy. You're Aaliyah Carter, daughter of Marcus and Renee, granddaughter of Mary Louise Carter. You carry their blood, their fight, their dignity. Stand tall, not just as someone's bride, but as your own woman. The words struck deep. Aaliyah felt her throat tighten, her chest heaving. For so long, she had been running. From the altar, from Derek, from the press. She had let others dictate the story. But Imani's fire lit something inside her she had almost forgotten she possessed. Her own voice. That afternoon, Pastor Elijah visited. He entered the hospital room with his usual quiet grace, greeting Marcus and Imani before settling beside Aaliyah. "You've been carrying a heavy burden," he said softly. Aliyah nodded. "It feels like no matter what I do, someone else twists it. If I stay, I'm weak. If I leave, I'm selfish. If I speak, I'm accused of lying. If I stay silent, I'm complicit." Pastor Elijah studied her for a long moment, then placed a hand over hers. "Child, listen to me. Your destiny is not tied to being anyone's bride, not Derek's, not Jordan's. Your grandmother left you more than land. She left you a legacy, a promise. Protecting that promise is not selfish, it's righteous. You were not born to be someone's possession. You were born to lead, to fight, to build. Don't waste that gift waiting for men to choose you. Choose yourself." His words filled her like light, breaking through the fog that had clouded her for weeks. She felt her grandmother's presence in them, as though Mary Louise herself whispered through Elijah's voice. "Stand tall, Aliyah." That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hospital windows, Jordan arrived. He carried a bouquet of bright flowers, his charm as polished as ever. "I came to check on your mother," he said, setting the flowers on the table. His eyes lingered on Aliyah. "And on you." Aliyah's guard rose. "Jordan," he cut her off, stepping closer. "I meant what I said before. With me, you wouldn't have to fight alone. We could sue the Montgomerys, strip Vanessa of her power. You'd be free, independent. And more than that, I'd give you the love Derek never could." For a moment, his words tempted her, but as she looked into his eyes, she saw the ambition there, the hunger not just for justice, but for conquest. He wasn't offering her freedom. He was offering her another cage, just gilded differently. Aliyah's voice was steady. "No, Jordan. I won't be your weapon. I won't be your pawn. I'm done being anyone's prize." His expression faltered, frustration flashing before he masked it with a smile. "You'll regret walking away from me." "Maybe," she said, turning back toward her mother, "but at least it will be my choice." That night, long after visiting hours had ended, Derek stood outside the hospital, hidden in the shadows. He had driven there alone, no entourage, no cameras. Through the glass windows, he saw Aliyah sitting by her mother's bed, her posture strong, her face calm, in a way he had never seen before. She wasn't weeping, she wasn't clinging, she was radiant in her resolve. Derek's chest ached as he realized the truth. She didn't need him. Not his money, not his name, not even his apology. For the first time in his life, Derek Montgomery, the man who thought he could buy or command anything, felt powerless, and strangely, he felt something else too, admiration. He whispered into the night, though no one could hear him. "I lost her. Not because she ran, but because I never deserved her." The next morning, Aliyah stepped outside for fresh air. The dawn painted the sky in pink and gold, and she felt the weight on her chest lifting. Imani joined her, slipping an arm around her shoulder. "So, what now?" Aliyah inhaled deeply, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "Now I fight. Not for Derek, not for Jordan, for us, for Mama, for Grandma's land, for every time they tried to make us feel small." Imani grinned, her pride unmistakable. "That's my sister." Back in the city, Vanessa sipped her morning coffee as she read the latest tabloid drafts her editors had prepared. Her smile was sharp. "The Carters think they can fight. Let them try. I've already spun the world against them. By the time Aliyah realizes the truth, she'll be buried in scandal." But she didn't know. Aliyah was no longer running. The awakening had begun. The courthouse loomed tall against the morning sky, its stone steps crowded with reporters and flashing cameras. Headlines had already painted the day as historic. Carter family takes Montgomery Empire to court. Aliyah Carter versus Vanessa Montgomery. The trial of legacy. Aaliyah stood at the bottom of the steps with Imani and Marcus flanking her. Renee, still fragile from her hospital stay, leaned gently against her husband for support. Pastor Elijah walked beside them, his presence calm and steady. "You don't have to do this alone," Marcus murmured. Aaliyah took a deep breath, clutching the leather folder that held her grandmother's deeds. "I'm not alone. I have all of you, and I have Grandma's truth." Imani squeezed her hand. "Let's burn that witch down." Inside, the courtroom buzzed with tension. Vanessa entered in a designer suit, her chin high, her entourage trailing behind her. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who had manipulated powerful men her whole life. But for the first time, her eyes flicked nervously toward Aaliyah, seated calmly at the plaintiff's table. Jordan sat nearby, watching intently. He leaned close to Aaliyah as proceedings began. "Remember, this is your moment. Win this, and you control everything." She gave him a sharp glance. "This isn't about control, Jordan. It's about justice." The bailiff called the court to order, and the trial began. The first hours were filled with technical jargon, land deeds, survey maps, legal history. Vanessa's lawyer, slick and sharp, tried to argue that the Carter deeds were outdated, that the Montgomery estate had long since absorbed the disputed land. But then came the moment Aaliyah had been waiting for. Her attorney rose, holding up the original deeds. "Your Honor, these documents prove that Mary Louise Carter, the grandmother of Aaliyah Carter, legally owned and maintained property rights, overlapping Montgomery estate lands. Furthermore, we present evidence that Vanessa Montgomery attempted to forge transfers of ownership over 30 years ago." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Renee's hands shook as she was called to the stand. With quiet dignity, she testified about the day Vanessa cornered her in the Montgomery household, pressuring her to sign away the land. "She told me," Renee's voice cracked, "that if I didn't sign, she'd ruin me." She said a maid had no right to question a Montgomery. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "But my mother refused, and she spent the rest of her life protecting those papers." The courtroom sat in stunned silence. Vanessa's mask began to slip. Her smile faltered, her posture stiffened. She whispered urgently to her lawyer, who shuffled papers, scrambling to respond. But then came the final blow. The judge called Derek Montgomery to the stand. The entire room froze. Even Aaliyah's heart skipped. Derek hadn't been expected to testify, not against his own stepmother. He walked slowly to the stand, his usually arrogant demeanor replaced with a heavy, sober gravity. When sworn in, he kept his eyes low at first. "Mr. Montgomery," Aaliyah's lawyer asked, "are you aware of any attempts by Vanessa Montgomery to alter or conceal the Carter land deeds?" Silence. Derek clenched his fists. His eyes flicked to Vanessa. Her look was venomous, a silent command. "Don't you dare." But then he turned his gaze toward Aaliyah. He saw her standing tall, saw Renee's fragile body in the front row, saw Marcus's steady strength, and he remembered his own cruelty, mocking Marcus at the altar, calling Renee's dress a joke. For the first time, he spoke with humility. "Yes," Derek said clearly, "Vanessa tried to hide the deeds from me. She told me the Carters were nothing, that their land was worthless. But she lied. The Carters were right. That land belongs to them." The courtroom exploded in gasps. Reporters scribbled furiously. Vanessa shot to her feet, her voice shrill. "Lies! All of it! Derek, how dare you betray me?" "Order!" The judge banged his gavel, but Vanessa wouldn't stop. She lunged toward Derek, her mask fully broken, her voice wild. "I made you. You'd be nothing without me. You think she loves you? She'll destroy you like she's destroying me." Security moved quickly, restraining her as she shouted, her polished image crumbling before the cameras. By the time the judge rendered his ruling, the outcome was clear. The Carter family's ownership is valid. Vanessa Montgomery's actions were fraudulent. Her claims are null and void. Vanessa collapsed into her seat, pale and defeated. The courtroom buzzed with victory for the Carters. Aaliyah exhaled deeply, her grip loosening on the folder. Imani threw her arms around her, whispering, "We did it, sis. We finally did it." Renee wept quietly, clutching Marcus's hand. Pastor Elijah bowed his head in prayer. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Microphones flashed in Aaliyah's face. "How does it feel to defeat Vanessa Montgomery? Do you plan to take control of Montgomery assets?" Aaliyah raised her chin. Her voice was calm, firm. "This was never about destroying the Montgomerys. This was about protecting my grandmother's legacy, my family's dignity. We will not be silenced. We will not be stolen from. And we will never again let arrogance decide our worth." The crowd erupted in cheers. Nearby, Jordan clapped slowly, pride gleaming in his eyes. "Well done," he murmured, but Aaliyah's gaze drifted past him, to Derek, who stood alone at the edge of the crowd, his face heavy with remorse. Their eyes met. For a heartbeat, neither looked away. Finally, Derek spoke, his voice breaking. "I let arrogance destroy everything. You were right to leave me. And now, I see it." Aaliyah's heart twisted. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned back to her family, linking arms with Imani and Marcus as they walked down the courthouse steps. Behind them, Vanessa was led out in disgrace, reporters shouting questions she no longer had the power to silence. The Queen had fallen, and Aaliyah had risen. The Montgomery mansion didn't look like a home that day. It looked like history on trial again. Iron gates, ivy crawling the stone, a semicircle of cameras blinking like cold eyes. A hush ran through the crowd as Aaliyah stepped from the sedan and faced the house that had once felt like a threat. She held no bouquet, wore no silk, just a fitted black dress, her natural hair in a soft halo, and the poise of a woman who had learned that dignity could be armor. Imani slipped to her side with a grin that was all sister and all fire. "You ready?" "As I'll ever be." Marcus and Renee came after them, Pastor Elijah between, a quiet pillar in a dark suit. The press surged forward. Questions, flashes, the breathless heat of gossip. A security rope held. Aaliyah raised a calm hand, and microphones leaned toward her like reeds toward the wind. "I'm here for one thing," she said, voice steady, "to finalize what the court already made plain. The Carter land is ours. We will decide its future. We will protect it." A murmur, then more questions, then... The great doors opened. Derek Montgomery stepped out alone. No entourage, no Vanessa, no board flanking him like armor. He had traded the gleaming arrogance of bespoke for a dark suit, with the jacket unbuttoned and the tie loosened. He looked like a man who had run out of tricks and found his way back to truth by accident. He stopped at the top of the steps. For a long beat, he didn't speak. The live feeds caught his throat work, the way his eyes swept the family he'd injured, and then came to rest on the woman he'd lost. He descended slowly. "Miss Carter," one reporter shouted, "is this a reconciliation?" "No," Aaliyah answered, not unkindly. "This is accountability." Derek reached the rope, and the security captain, unused to seeing him without demand, looked to Aaliyah. She nodded. The rope lifted. He stepped through and stopped 3 paces from Marcus and Renee. For a heartbeat, he didn't look at Aaliyah at all. He looked at her parents, and when he spoke, his voice carried across the courtyard without cracking. "Mr. Carter, Mrs. Carter," he swallowed. "I came to apologize." Not a press apology, not a statement. A man to the 2 people I shamed, he turned to Marcus first. "At the altar, I measured a father by a suit. I spoke loud so a room would laugh. I did that, No one else. I thought money made me immune from being small. That day it only made me loud about it. I'm sorry the world seemed to stop on the way those words left him, heavy as they were simple. Derek turned to Renee next. Mrs. Carter, you raised 2 daughters who stand like trees. I mocked your dress because I was afraid of what I couldn't buy. Roots. I am sorry, Marcus searched his face. The cameras caught it, the battle between a good man's fury and a good man's faith. Slowly he stepped forward, not with a smile nor with anger, but with something older, the decision to be himself before the world told him what to be. He offered his hand. Derek flinched, surprised. Then he took it. You wronged us, Marcus said, steady, and you wronged my child. Forgiveness don't cancel truth, but truth can make room for a different tomorrow, Renee. Eyes shining, placed a hand over both their hands. God sees us trying. A ripple moved through the crowd, not the fever of gossip, but the soft shiver of witnessing something decent. The moment would play 1,000 times that night, slowed down and captioned, but none of those clips would capture the quiet relief that crossed Aaliyah's face. Her parents had been honored, the bruise not healed, but seen. Derek turned to her then. Aaliyah. She lifted her chin, and the space between them filled with all the things they were not saying. The ballroom, the laugh, the run, the search, the churchyard, the hospital door. He drew a breath. I don't ask you to take me back, he said. I ask you to know I heard you. And I will spend years, if that's what it takes, being a man who would never put a woman through what I did. She held his gaze. You don't need my permission to be better, Derek. He nodded once. It landed like a lesson. A black SUV purred to the curb. Doors opened, and a neat phalanx of lawyers and stewards emerged with a lacquered box and a sheaf of documents. Aaliyah's counsel met them at the threshold. The exchange was quiet, formal. Keys, access codes, maps of easements, a series of agreements acknowledging the court's ruling and the practical implications. Boundaries to be respected, revenue percentages owed, right-of-way issues to resolve. The language of empires and acres. Aaliyah signed where she needed to sign. When she finished, her lawyer held out the final document, the Memorandum of Understanding between the Carter Family Trust and Montgomery Holdings regarding shared roads and historic structures. Miss Carter, the lawyer said, this recognizes your stewardship of all parcels described. You'll have a seat at the table for any development affecting your land, reporters shouted. A seat on the board? Are you joining Montgomery Holdings? Are you taking over? Aaliyah passed the document back and faced the cameras. I'm not entering anyone's house to be their token. My grandmother's land will become the Carter Community Trust, affordable housing, a literacy center, small business incubators, and grants for young entrepreneurs from our neighborhoods. If Montgomery Holdings wants to partner on that work, they can start by listening. If they won't, we'll build anyway. It wasn't a vow shouted, it was a plan stated, and somehow that carried further. Congratulations, he said softly. You won without me. I fought with my family, she replied. And yet, he said, lowering his voice, you could do more, with me. Imagine the trust funded for a century. Imagine Montgomery Holdings forced into real reform because you and I hold the purse strings. Imagine never needing these gates again. He didn't kneel. Jordan wasn't a kneeling kind of man, but he laid something else down, his ambition reborn as an offer. Aaliyah looked past him to the people who mattered. Imani, already calculating budgets in her head, Marcus, shoulders squared with pride, Renee, hand tucked in the crook of his arm, Pastor Elijah, that warm gravity that said, remember who you are. She glanced at Derek, too. the man who had finally put down the armor that made him cruel. "You both talk about what I could be," she said. "I know who I am." Jordan's jaw flexed, and for the first time the charm cracked. "And who is that, Aaliyah?" "The woman who doesn't need either of you to do what she was born to do." He tried again, softer. "At least let me help fund the trust. No strings. Jordan," she said gently, "with you there are always strings. You weave with them," he laughed, quiet and bruised. "You cut cleaner than you look." I learned from the best. Imani let out a tiny, savage cheer through her teeth. A city official approached with a clipboard and a nervous smile. "Miss Carter, the councilwoman asked if you'd consider a joint announcement downtown this evening. Formal recognition of the trust, zoning commitments, that sort of thing." "Tell her we'll be there," Aaliyah said, "but not tonight. My mother's coming home. We're having stew and peach cobbler and peace." A ripple of laughter, soft and relieved. Derek cleared his throat. "There's one more thing." He lifted a manila envelope from his inside pocket and held it out. "Internal memos, emails, records of Vanessa's payments to smear you and your sister. I'm turning them over to your counsel and to the Attorney General. It won't undo what she did, but it will stop what she planned next." Aaliyah took the envelope. "Why give this to me?" "Because you were never my enemy," he said. "Only my lesson." A hush fell. Somewhere, a bird called from the oak that had seen Montgomerys come and go for 100 years. It felt like a benediction or a warning. Reporters, finally remembering their jobs, surged. "Miss Carter, what about your love life? Are you choosing Mr. Blake? Mr. Montgomery, is there hope? Are you and Vanessa estranged for good? Will you step down as CEO?" Aaliyah held up a hand. "No questions about my love life. There is no story there." One last tremor ran through the crowd, as if the city itself exhaled. She turned to her parents. "Ready to go home?" "Been ready," Marcus said. They started back toward the car. Jordan moved, then stopped himself. Derek didn't move at all. For once, both men understood the assignment. Let her walk. At the curb, a little boy slipped through the legs of a cameraman and stared up at Aaliyah with round eyes. "Are you the lady who made the mean lady go away?" Aaliyah crouched, the dress folding neatly. "I'm just somebody's granddaughter," she said, "and I remembered what my grandma taught me." "What's that?" "Never let anybody tell you what you're worth." "You tell them," the boy nodded solemnly, as if she'd handed him a secret map. They reached the sedan. Renee paused, turned back to Derek. "You keep doing right, son," she said softly, "even when no one's watching." He bowed his head. "Yes, ma'am." Pastor Elijah shook Derek's hand, then Jordan's. "Men," he said, "there's enough work in this world for both of you to become better if you want it." When the doors closed, the car pulled away to a chorus of overlapping sounds. Shutters, murmurs, a dove taking clumsy flight from a gutter. The mansion shrank in the rear window, like a picture finally set back on a shelf. They didn't go far, just home. The same small house, the same porch that had held secrets and prayers. Neighbors wandered over with casseroles. Kids drew hopscotch on the sidewalk. Someone's uncle tuned a guitar and started humming something old and sweet. It felt like a soft uprising, community showing out with love as if to say, "We see you. We hold you up." Inside, the kitchen steamed with stew. Imani burned the first tray of cornbread and blamed the oven. Marcus pretended not to see her scrape the worst bits into the trash. Renee, still a little pale, added nutmeg to the peach cobbler and shooed everyone from her stove with the authority of a queen at court. They ate crowded around the table that had been both war room and sanctuary. Laughter showed up without apology. Aliyah sat quiet in the middle of it and realized peace wasn't quiet at all. It was noisy with the right people. Later, when the dishes were stacked and the cousins finally left and the house exhaled, Aliyah stepped onto the porch. The evening had gone soft, the kind of southern twilight that made everything look gentler than it was. She leaned on the railing and let the silence do its work. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She stared at it, thinking of the anonymous letter that had started a chain of courage, thinking of how many times a phone had delivered pain. She let it buzz again, then answered. A low voice, measured. Miss Carter? My name is Evelyn Hart. I chair the Independent Audit Committee at Montgomery Holdings. We've been reviewing historical transactions, the ones your case highlighted. There are additional irregularities. Offshore trusts, shell transfers, transactions that predate Vanessa. If you're truly building the Carter Community Trust, you'll want to see how deep this goes. I'd prefer to show you in person. Aliyah watched a moth halo the porch light. Why call me? Because you're the only person in this story who didn't ask for power and still ended up holding it, the woman said. And because I think you'll do the right thing with it. A beat. Downtown, Monday, 10 a.m. No press. Come alone or bring counsel. Your choice. The line clicked dead. Aliyah stood there, the world suddenly tilting up to reveal another staircase. She didn't feel fear, exactly. More like the sensation of a locked door easing under her palm. She looked back through the window. Her mother laughed at something Pastor Elijah said on TV. Imani danced with a dish towel. Marcus dozed in his chair like a mountain that finally decided to rest. She typed a message to her lawyer. Monday, 10 a.m., follow-up meeting. Quiet. Then another to the councilwoman. Ready to talk zoning next week. The trust is real. She pocketed the phone and stepped off the porch into the yard. Fireflies stitched light between the hedges like small, stubborn miracles. She walked the sidewalk to the corner and back, feeling the ground that held her, feeling how different standing could be from running. Back at the mansion, under the cooling floodlights, Derek stood alone and did the thing Vanessa had trained him never to do. He stayed long enough to feel small without trying to fix it with spectacle. Jordan, in a town car 3 blocks away, watched the clip of Aliyah crouched with the little boy and realized charm wasn't the same as goodness, and he had confused the two more times than he could count. By midnight, the headlines had shifted again. Aliyah Carter declines both men, chooses community. Carter, trust to redevelop family land for neighborhoods, not profit. Montgomery. Air hands over evidence. Vanessa faces new probes. In the quiet of her room, Aliyah opened her grandmother's leather folder one more time. The deeds didn't look like weapons anymore. They looked like seeds. She imagined what might grow. A row of modest townhomes with porches, a library with sunlight cut into it, a kitchen incubator where aunties turned recipes into businesses, a summer program where little boys learned to say their worth out loud. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a simple text from an unknown number. You won a battle. The board will make you an offer. Don't accept their first one. A friend, she smiled despite herself. Everybody got advice now, she said to the empty room, and turned out the light. Morning would bring meetings and headlines, and the next fight. It would bring numbers and zoning maps and new enemies with cleaner hands. It would bring the question of whether she could build something without letting the men who loved or wanted her build it for her. But tonight was for what power had tried to crush and failed. A mother safe in her own bed, a father whose handshake meant something, a sister who could be loud without being punished for it, and a woman who finally believed that walking away could be the most powerful direction of all. Outside, somewhere between porch and streetlight, A firefly flared and went dark, then flared again, and Aaliyah Carter walked away from both men. Here comes the end of the story. If I was able to make your day, comment Mr. Hope you made my day.